sink in. All right, I believe we are live. Awesome. So, hello, Arty Peoples, and welcome to another episode of Jerry's Live. My name is Amy Klein, and I'm your host this evening. And as you can see, I have the amazing, the one, the only Jimmy Leslie with us.
Wow. I'll take it.
Definitely. I mean, you're an awesome instructor, and you work with Cole Art, so you have a vast knowledge, and I'm always so excited to have you here on the show. So
awesome.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
ladies and gents, before Jimmy does take it over, though, just wanted a quick reminder, if you are interested in anything that Jimmy is showing us on this amazing demo here, go to the website, jerrysartorama.com, and type in the top search bar today's class code, which is JL232. So if you type that in, the teacher's cart should come up, and everything you're going to be showing us should come up. And without further ado, please take it over.
All right, sounds good. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Happy International Women's Day. I'm going to say this for my daughter. Girls rule. So I've got that out of the way. And for you too, yes. Right there. Yes. So yeah, welcome. Good to be here with you today. My name is Jimmy Leslie. I am the resident artist for Liquitex and the director of their Fine Art Collective education program. I'm a former college art professor, so I do love talking about art. I love teaching, and I love questions. If you've joined us for any past Jerry's Live, you'll know I say that constantly. Ask questions, and Emmy will interrupt me at any point. That's fine, and I will do my best to answer every question that you have acrylic related. This evening, what we're going to do is talk about 12 new colors from Liquitex in the heavy body range, and that's one of the coolest parts of my job. When the marketing folks and the chemists say, well, it's the marketing folks usually first. They say, hey, we're gonna present a possibility of a new product, and in this case, new colors. And then they're gonna work with the lab. They're gonna develop that. I get to test them in early stages, and it's just a lot of fun because you're an artist and you get new colors and new things to play with. So I'm going to share those with you tonight. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to just point out a few things in terms of social media on Instagram. And Emmy, maybe you can put that in the chat there, at TFACNA. So that stands for what I just told you before, that education program, the Fine Art Collective North America. And why that's important is we do a lot of live streams there as well, and also mini demos, little bite-sized chunks of art materials information, so you can find them there. Also, if you want to come say hi to me, go over to Instagram at Jimmy Leslie Art, and you can see what I'm up to on a daily, weekly basis in my own practice, and often using a lot of the things that we're talking about right now and other materials. Of course, Liquitex Official, that's the brand we're talking about tonight. And last but not least, Jerry's Artorama, you want to check them out as well and just be connected with everything. Now, what we're going to do this evening is I'm going to work on, well, I've got this finished already. And here's, when I get this up here, yeah, there's the chunkiness right there around this sunburst that starts to happen. This was an image, a photograph I took of a nearby farm looking into the sunlight back in a late fall. So it was really, really beautiful. The colors were fantastic. And I'm going to show you the reference photo in a minute, but I'm trying to really pull out a lot of different colors out of the colors that I have here. Now, I'm going to go through these as I start to use them specifically. So this is going to be a quick run through because I want to get to painting right away. And while certain sections of what I'm doing are drying, then we'll get back into some other examples that I have to show you. So light bismuth yellow, that's a beautiful color. Bismuth is a bismuth yellow is a color that's pretty iconic in watercolor ranges. This is light phthalo green, light phthalocyanine green. Now, if you're not familiar, if you ever see the word phthalocyanine, and that's usually associated with greens and blues, it is an incredibly strong staining color. And here we've got this mixture with white already, which gives you this lighter version of it that's not so overpowering. This one I want you to kind of keep in mind. This is indigo, but I wouldn't fault you if you said, no, it's not, Jimmy, it's black. And I would say, okay, fair enough. Wait till we see the undertone. We're looking at mass tone here. And with the white and the black, it helps you understand the opacity of what's going on here. So we see light bismuth yellow, light phthalo green, indigo, and then we get transparent orange. And this has a yellowish undertone. This is a favorite of mine, and I'll show you. We're going to use this heavily tonight. But here's, if you want to get shimmery, we've got iridescent rose gold and iridescent black. So that iridescent comes from mica flakes that are in there. That gives you that shimmery. And then we've got 6 fluorescents. We got fluorescent yellow, orange, red, pink, which I think it shows better. Where's my jar? Yeah. Here we go. I've got, it's like bubble gum, like intense. The 80s are calling. They want their fluorescent colors back. These are like popping like crazy. And then also in the mix is blue and green. And when we talk about the fluorescent colors, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that fluorescent colors are dye-based as opposed to colors that are pigment-based. So when we looked at those colors in the top row, we have a lot of pigment-based colors. And then we have the iridescents, which have that little bit of mica in there. And then the fluorescents based on dyes. So dyes, like your jeans, can fade over time. I'll get into that a little bit more, but just kind of keep that in the back of your head. Dyes versus pigments. Pigments really withstand UV light very, very well. And dyes don't so much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right in though here. I've got a ground here, and let's switch back to my overhead. And when we look at this, what I'm using here, so this is on a canvas. It's just on a little 6x6 inch canvas. But what I'm going to work for you on tonight is Liquitex's sister brand is Winsor and Newton, and we've got this mixed media paper. So this is great. I've got this here. It's a nice weight. I can work on it with acrylic and not buckle the paper. And it's more affordable than watercolor paper. And so great for all things down. I've got the fluorescent orange down here, and we're going to jump right in with my palette here. And I'm going to begin to sort of sketch things out. Now, one thing I want to take a look at, I'm going to grab my ruler back here for a second. I want to show you something. If I take a line corner to corner right here, you can see that this sunburst here sits just to the left of that line. And if I take one from top to bottom, it sits just below that. So it's kind of a nice intersection if I sketch this out, and I'm going to get you a little closer here. As I begin to do that, I was looking for my pencil. It's in my ear. That's like looking for your glasses, which are on my shirt. I do that all the
time.
Right? I think everybody does that. And you know, if your family's like mine, they like to not tell you right away.
Of course.
Because that can be fun. Now, all I'm going to do to start this is I'm just going to rough out this circle. And I'm not getting too dark, but I'm going to rough out this circle. Well, look when I say circle too. It's really not a circular shape. It's a very, very, kind of irregular shape. And as I start to sketch that out, I'm going to first share my screen, and I want to show you the reference photo and something that I did. So I've got my reference photo on the left, and you can see that burst, that burst and that brightness, and a lot of oranges, reds, and things like that. And sometimes what I like to do, which informs me a little bit more, I've pixelated this image. So you can find all sorts of apps to do this. I won't get into that right now, but I've pixelated that. So I've really taken it down to some abstract essentials. And I think that's kind of interesting because it simplifies the whole process. And a lot of times when people are dealing with a sunburst or even just a sunset, sunrise, moon, something like that, they'll draw this perfect circle. And I suppose in some cases that happens, but a lot of times it's quite irregular, the way light is reflecting off of different surfaces, and in this case, hitting trees and getting diffused. So I kind of want you to keep that in mind a little bit as I begin to sketch this out. So let's jump right into it. And I'm going to use a palette knife quite a bit, but I'm going to grab this brush first. I've got a number 6 bright. This is a well-worn Liquitex freestyle brush. And I'm going to jump right in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of that bismuth yellow and bring that right in here. And as I start to do that, I'm also going to take, I'm going to move you guys over a little bit here. I'm going to take some of the fluorescent yellow in with that and kind of build out from there. So I want to get this idea of this sunburst radiating out from this area. And as I do that, I'm going to grab a little bit of the transparent orange as well. So I'm going to kind of build out from here. And I'm going to show you this real quick. Here's a kind of intermediate stage I have here right now, where I built out from that sunburst pattern, and I've gotten much darker in the periphery. And then I started to sketch out, you can see the trunk of this tree here. I've just really lightly sketched it out, kind of lightly sketched where I have these sun rays coming down. So I will do that. And I'm going to show you some other examples in a few minutes, but let's get a little more of this in here. As I do this, I'm going to take a little bit of that indigo, and I want to show you that color before I put it on the surface here. I'm going to use it to knock back the orange a little bit, but I'm going to take my palette knife. And again, if you're looking at that, black, right? It's so dense, it's black. But I'm going to take a little bit of titanium white. I'm not going to take much, just a little bit. Actually, I'll take a little more. Why not? Take a little more. I've got more. I can use it. And I'm going to take a little bit of that indigo. And right away, you're going to see we start to get, I don't know, that's kind of like the fluorescence. That's very 80s. That's like stonewash jeans right there, right? I like mine darker. I'm not the stonewash guy. I'm maybe more like this. But we get that beautiful indigo color that we associate with denim, with our jeans. And that comes from a plant called the indigo tinctorum plant, if you want to get your Latin on there a little bit, although we use some synthetic versions of that today. It's definitely more sustainable to do that. So I'm going to take a little bit of that color. And I know, you know this too likely, that orange and blue are complementary colors to one another. So I'm going to knock back that orange quite a bit. It's almost going to make it more like an umber. And that's going to allow me to get darker still as I move out in the periphery. So, you know, this is kind of thinking about that pixelated version of what I have and really just keeping things quite simple. And the burst of sun coming through here, that's the exciting part, right? That's the thing that jumps out at us when we start looking at sunsets and sunrises and all those beautiful things that seem so relaxing and gorgeous. And you can kind of see that, you know, that radiating burst already. Now, you know what I'm doing here a little bit, because, you know, these Jerry's Facebook Lives are not super long, about an hour long. So I need to work quickly. And I, of course, want to show you some other things I have here. So I'm mixing a little bit with my brush. And I want you to keep in mind, that's you can do it, right? But it's sort of a do as I say, not as I do, right? Is that the statement? Yeah, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Yeah. Couldn't remember what it was. And the reason I say that is because sometimes when you're two things can happen when you mix with a brush. You can get colors from one area of the palette in other colors, and they can get contaminated and they can get muddy and they can get, you know, just kind of messy. The other thing is, unlike a palette knife, you can't mix up a nice volume of the paint. And so if you try to mix up with your brush, often you get a little bit, you get what you want, but then you go to use it again and you just don't have enough there. So kind of keep that in mind. And again, I'm doing it right now to move quickly, but I'm gonna move into the palette knife also in just a bit here. And let's go back and just do a little bit more of this sunburst. I think there's too much of a sort of circle kind of concentric thing. And I wanna make that a little bit more homogenized. So I'm bringing some more of that transparent orange out into the indigo and just kind of softening that a little bit. And then I'll do the same thing once again. I'm going to clean off my brush though. And I'm going to take some of that fluorescent yellow. And remember, I love questions. If you've got questions, it could be about these colors. It could be about the process.
Actually, we just did get a really good question. Are you using any medium with your paints?
Not at the moment. I'm not. I love that question because I want to tell you this quickly before we go on. It's a great question. So when you say medium, and well, there's two things. In art, we'll use the term media. So what sometimes people might say, what kind of artist are you? I'm a painter. And they say, what media do you work in? So acrylic, oil, watercolor, and the like. When we talk about a medium, we're talking about something we mix with the paint. And this is always the thing. People who have seen me in demos or past students know I've said this ad nauseum. I want you to always think about this for anybody who's not familiar with mediums. Mediums can change the viscosity, so the thickness of your color, your paint. They can make them dry quick, or they can change the drying rate. So they can also change the texture as well. And, you know, when you're using them, I think of them as this tool that customizes your color. So I think of it like the urban spice rack that you have in your kitchen. So mediums can do that. So one example of a medium, like, you know, here's, for instance, let's go back to my overhead here. I happen to have this just to the left of me. Here's a Liquitex glazing medium, right? So that can be added to the paint. And what you're doing is you're not only changing the consistency of the paint. Here it'll tell you that it's got a square there that is not filled in with color. That means it's transparent. If we see a square there that is filled in, that's going to mean it's opaque. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit here. And what we'll do is I want to show you a few things. I'm going to grab, let's go back to my overhead view here. There we go. I'm going to show you a few things where we've dealt with this sort of sunburst type of pattern here. And you can see the super chunkiness that you can get with Liquitex Heavy Body. Now, Liquitex Heavy Body is a range of paint that came out in 1963. Prior to that, we had Soft Body, which we still have, and that is a more medium viscosity. But this is a very high viscosity paint. So yeah, that's a great angle right there. So if you're looking for a paint, an acrylic, right, because you want something that's going to dry fast, you want something maybe that is water soluble, easy to clean up, but you want it to have that drag, which is what we call when we pull across the surface and it leaves those marks that you get with oil paint. This would be the closest. And I would venture to say that a lot of times I think that people, when I first start talking to people about acrylics, you know, they'll often say that I can't blend them. They dry too quick. Well, that's where the mediums come in. That great question that just came in. So whoever asked that question, good star for you. That's where that can change. But it's also about choosing the viscosity of the paint. So in the Liquitex ranges, we make an acrylic ink. That's a super fluid, you know, as ink suggests, super fluid acrylic. So that's not going to be something that's going to give you that oil-like feel at all, right? That's going to give you more of an, obviously, ink or possibly watercolor-like feel. The soft body is not really going to give you that either. It's more self-leveling, but the heavy body is going to give you that drag. It's going to really give you that oil-like feel. And I think this is another example I'll show you where I think if you didn't know, if I didn't say that it was acrylic, I think you'd think it was an oil painting. I don't think it, you know, especially those heavy marks right there. And those are laid on with the palette knife. So I really like that kind of, you know, fun, thick, chunky look that you get. And I'll show you another too with these colors. So some of the colors, while our example's starting to dry there, these are laid on with a palette knife, and these are little studies of the Catskill Mountains. I was up there for the weekend a while back, and it was cloudy and also foggy. And take a look here where I've used the palette knife. You can see there's that flat edge. Look how, and I can just pull that down. We can echo what happened there. So it's a nice way to work quickly. And what I like about a palette knife, it doesn't get you caught up in little details. If you're somebody who feels like, man, I get too involved, too caught. Yeah, Emmy says, yeah, she's waving hands there. You know, that can be a little tough. Now, before I show you some of those other mixtures, I want to show you this and what I like about Heavy Body. I was making this the other day. So what I did here, this is what you call sgraffito. Now, sgraffito is Italian for to scratch into a surface. So what I did is I put down the yellow fluorescent, the orange, the pink, the red, the blue, and green, and I let that dry. And let's get some angles here. You can see how we dug through the surface. I put that iridescent rose gold down and dug through. Yeah, that's a good angle. Look at that. And you can see that green come through. You can see that blue, which almost looks violet against the rose gold, the red, the pink, the orange, and the yellow again. Now, where I like this kind of technique, now I'm just playing, right? I'm just playing with this as an example. But one thing you can do, if you're working on something like a landscape, and you had a lighter ground and then you put some paint down, you could dig through with a palette knife or some other instrument like that and reveal different variations that would give you a feel of grass. I also like that too. The sgraffito technique is something that you could do if you were working on a portrait. So let's say you're working on a portrait and you've got the hair and there's this wispy flyaway hair. Rembrandt, this is homework. You're not gonna get homework. You're like, wait, Jerry's Facebook Live, I get homework? It's easy, it's easy. I wish I could think of the specific portrait, but I think check out some of the portraits by Rembrandt. I think in particular, his wife, Saskia. I think that's Saskia. And you'll see where he dug into that wet paint and revealed what was below. So the heavy body is nice for that kind of technique because you can get that thick texture on top and then dig down there. And also here's some palette knife marks that I like too. So, different palette knives. This one will give you this more rounded feel. The little one that I just used is going to give you these more hard edge. One that is much bigger. Let's see, where's my other palette knives here? Oh, I've lost my other palette knives. Oh, I'll find it in a minute. Here we go. Here's the large number 8. This one with these little ridges can dig right into the surface and give you that sgraffito technique while you're using the palette knife itself. Okay, so let's get back into this. I think this is going to be dry enough to, yeah, that's because I went pretty thin. It's close enough. It might be a little wet, and that's okay. I'm gonna draw over this surface a little bit, and I'm gonna use some of that indigo again with a little bit of the transparent orange, and it's just gonna be kind of darker than what I have. And I'm gonna do that just to kind of sketch out where my different placement really of this tree, of this horizon line is. So I'm gonna just get real. Right? It's very simple. Now, one of the things I was trained as a figurative painter. I still do work with the figure. I still do, portrait work and things like that. It's something I really love and I enjoy. But one of the things when I got into landscape painting that I enjoyed so much is the freedom of something that's organic, right? Because if I'm painting a portrait and let's say I'm painting a self-portrait. If my eyes, if I don't get them this correct distance apart and they're over here, I'm probably going to look like a fish, like a bass or a catfish or something like that. I don't have the leeway if this is a big if I'm trying to deal with a representational portrait, if I'm trying to get it to look like the person or like a reasonable person, that can get kind of tricky, right? You don't have the leeway to do that. But the beauty of working with anything, I also want to say this, I think sometimes like if you're dealing with buildings or man-made structures, that can be the case too. But when you're dealing with landscapes, if this branch went this way a little bit more, well, that could happen. And if the leaf areas and things like that, the foliage were a little bit different, well, that can happen. And that could change from one day to the next if leaves fall off the tree. So there's a lot more leeway. So anyway, I've just got kind of big ideas down there. And then what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take my palette knife now. I'm going to move this over a little bit. I think I'm going to flip my situation here. Yeah, we'll do this. This makes a lot more sense. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take a little bit more of that bismuth yellow. And I'm going to take some of that fluorescent yellow. And one of the things, Emmy, I want you to remind me of this before we're done. Like if I don't get a chance before like the last few minutes, I want to have you remind me to show these with a black light. I'll do a quick.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll run across my studio, try not to trip, turn off the lights, and then show a black light. So I'm going to come in here right now, and I'm just going to pull this, the light of this across my horizon line right here. And I can do that.
A quick question while you're laying that down. Is there anything on your palette, like, are you doing anything special to keep your paints that are on your palette from drying out?
Yes and no. At the moment, no, and because this is a quicker session, and I have kind of thicker piles of the paint here. It's probably not that big of an issue, but I actually do have a palette wetting spray here. Now you could mist with a little bit of water. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Obviously, acrylics can be thinned with water, of course, right? I always tell people though, if you're thinning with water, no more than about 20% water to the paint, because you don't want to affect its ability to adhere to the surface, right? Because think about cleaning your brush. Always, that's the example I always use. So I've got my, little can here with water in it. So if I'm doing that, I'm breaking down the paint by really dissolving it with the water. So if you spritz too much water on the surface, you don't want it runny. The thing I would always say to people is don't have your acrylics or your oils, if you're working with oil paint, don't get them to the consistency of watercolor. All right, they're acrylics. So yes, I could do that, but the reason for the palette wetting spray, in case anyone's wondering, is that that's basically your acrylic medium that's atomized. So it's this little bit that's coming out, and that's going to add to our adhesion, right? It's adding to it rather than breaking down like water will do. So I'm just pulling this over here a little bit. And what I'm starting to do now, I'm going to start to take a little bit of I'm going to grab my palette knife instead of the do as I say, not as I do. I'm going to grab a little bit of my fluorescent orange here, super strong. And I'm going to grab some of that transparent orange. So get sort of a hybrid thing going on here a little bit. And I'm just going to come up here. I want to get some of those rays that are coming off, and in between those lighter areas, I'm going to have these marks. And I love the thickness of applying paint this way. To me, it's a lot of fun because I think it depends on who you are. There's not a right or wrong. If you want to work in a manner that's very thin and you want to hide your brush strokes, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just an aesthetic choice that you make. But for me, I think I've always loved, I don't think, I know that I've always loved seeing the marks left behind by artists. I think a lot of times the idea of that is why we like looking at sketchbooks so much, or seeing unfinished work. You can go to a museum and you see the finished work and you're like, wow, that it's beautiful. I want to see that gorgeous work of art to completion. But there's something about seeing the unfinished work or the process that gets you into the head of the artist. And I don't know, that thrills me more than anything. And it's also very intimate too, when I can really see the marks that were left behind. That's it's like being a detective and seeing what that artist did, and it kind of gets you into their mind a little bit. So I really kind of find that quite beautiful and kind of fun to pay attention to. So I'm getting some of these lighter variations that we have in the finished piece coming down off of here, and just as they radiate out, just laying that down. And I can manipulate with the brush as well. It's not working with the palette knife is not a either or type of thing. It's not like, well, if I work with a palette knife, I can't work with a brush. Of course, you can do both and do anything you want. But I really kind of like laying that on there. And I'll show you a few examples where that's done as let's get a little bit more of this down. Now, by doing this, by starting to lay down color like this, what we begin to do is without almost doing anything, we kind of define the tree by leaving that there as this dark area that's left behind. So that trunk is getting sort of defined just by being there. Negative space is what we would call that. Certainly if we were in definitely in a drawing class, we'd call that negative space. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to think of my photos exactly what they are, as a reference photo. So I take a lot of liberties in dealing with imagery. So everything's starting to kind of radiate out from there. Now, while we, that's not, now, I'm getting so thick here, this is not going to dry up on us or anything like that. I don't have any fear of that. I'm going to work back into it, but I want to show you a few other things I have with me because I'm working with these really bold, warm colors. But these very same colors that I have, very same ones on the palette, everything I just showed you, were used to create this snow scene just a few weeks ago. So when we look, so totally, I mean, the same exact palette, the same exact
Really?
palette. Yeah, kind of crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah, clearly, I didn't use the orange in this, but this was a little view across the street from my house, and it was snowing at night. This is back, I guess, late January, and the street light, which is off to the side, cast this weird, eerie green sort of glow. And I couldn't even figure out when I looked at it why that green glow was there, but it was. And so that is, I don't even have I don't even have the actual tube, folks. I've still got my jar I'm using from the lab, but that's that bismuth yellow pretty much that you see right up there in the corner. Now these tubes, because I do want to show you the actual tube, these tubes look like this. So with the fluorescent color, it's going to say NR on there. You'll see a little sun symbol and you'll see NR. What does that mean? Not rated. Okay, not rated. So what? What does not rated mean? Let's look at a totally different color. This happens to be quinacridone burnt orange in the Liquitex Heavy Body range. And you'll see here, there's a 1. So that's because the fluorescent color, as I started out saying, is based on dyes. And since dyes will fade over time, they can't, if you test them for light fastness and you put them in a machine that we have in our lab that tests for light fastness, they will fade right away. They will fade when hit with UV light. When we see this 1, this Roman numeral 1, that means that if you hang your painting made with a pigment-based paint that registers as a 1 on the light fastness scale, that means if you're hanging that in your house, it's not getting hit with UV light, it's being filtered through glass, and it's in stable environment, 100 years, that's not going to change. So you might say, well, but this is going to change. Absolutely. That can totally fade. But I don't want to freak you out. I don't want to freak you out when I say that, because fluorescent colors are a lot of fun. And the second I tell people they're going to fade, they lose it, right? So let me show you this. This is a painting with a fluorescent orange base. So you can see that fluorescent orange right there, that base. So, well, now we've covered it all up, right? Here we go. Right? Fluorescent orange base. So still very strong in these areas where it pokes through. Now, this happens to be an oil painting, but the reason I wanted to show you this, it was still a fluorescent color, 2012. And this is something I never really did anything with. I obviously didn't sell it. I have it here, and I never showed it. So in an exhibition. So it's been sitting in the corner of my studio over where no light comes in and hits it. Just the light of the studio here, but no sunlight. And what I like about a few things, first of all, the color that you put down can inform something. So this was painted in a half hour, in 30 minutes. Sitting at a lake while on vacation up in New Hampshire, and the sun was just going down. I'm like, let me see what I can, bang out real quick. And you can see where I got really thick and quite opaque with areas that I wanted to stand out strong. But then I let the used transparent colors over that fluorescent orange, and you get it again to poke through in all sorts of different areas. So this is why I wanted to show you this. This is an oil painting, but again, look at that section. Right? Oil painting, super chunky, what we kind of expect with oil. And then let me come back again to that one, right? Same kind of feel. So that's where that heavy body, if you're looking for the oil-like feel, but you don't want to be working with a solvent like mineral spirits or other things like that. I'll show you 2 more here, and then we'll get back to work on our image here. Also winter stuff. So this is where I'm going to show you a toned ground coming through. So if you look here, you're going to see a mix of the fluorescent orange with a little bit of the transparent orange. So I knocked it back so it wasn't strong. So this whole piece was first put down as a ground. So that everywhere you see that coming through, that's that mixture of color. And then when I laid other color down, it's sort of like the sgraffito technique, except I didn't make lines. I scraped away to reveal what was underneath, and it gives the tree this rough texture. And then I could drag other blues and things over that to get that feeling of snow that stuck to that those tree trunks. And this was a frozen ravine also up in the Catskills. And there's that fluorescent pink. And I knocked the fluorescent pink back with the bismuth yellow, so it wasn't super strong. And there's the bismuth yellow up top right here. So very, very muted colors. And it's all about how you mix those things together. And one more I'm going to show you, and then we'll get back to some brightness. Well, I'm here right now. This is my studio behind my house. So I'm in there, coming to you. And this is the path that goes back there, or the path that I dug out after a particularly big storm of the year. We don't get a ton of snow in New Jersey, a whole lot, but this was a big storm. And so here is using some of these very colors that I have on the palette. There's the bismuth yellow. There's the phthalo green, light phthalo green. You see it up there as well. The iridescent black is what's down here as a base. And yeah, you can see some of the shimmery quality of that right there. And then I was using the fluorescent blue and the pink to create some of these violets. And again, I'll show you that with a black light in a little bit. But let's get back to this one. And Emmy, if there's any questions,
currently
away.
Everyone is just going ooh and ah over all of your work.
Ooh and ah is good. Ooh and ah is good. But again, guys, don't. Here's what I want. I gotta go face to face for this, because I want you to know. I want you to know I'm sincere here. Don't be afraid to ask a question because you think it's silly or you think it's too elementary. That's just somebody else wants to ask the same question. So just a little bit of bravery today on International Women's Day. Fire away and let it be known. I'm happy to answer it, and it's just a lot of fun to do that. So I'm going to come back in here. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to get this a little bit more homogenized. I'm going to come back in with my, with the palette knife now, with that bismuth yellow. Now, you know, when I can show it again in a minute, the reference photo, but you know, sometimes when you have a glare that's really strong, it can appear almost as white, as full on white, but sometimes that can be too much. But I want you to take a look at this. Let me move the palette. If I bring this up closer, that appears as white. It really, compared to everything else, it does, without being so white that it's blown out, that it's devoid of color and devoid of warmth. So that bismuth yellow, I find the bismuth, ooh, that's almost a tongue twister. The bismuth yellow is a little tongue twister. I find that a fun color to mix with others and knock it back a little bit without losing the warmth. And that's important, because a lot of times what people will do is they will use white too much. And you have to remember, every time you're using a white, like a titanium white, especially, what that's doing is not only making everything lighter, it's also making everything cooler, is making it really cool. So you got to be careful about that. So that's where something like the bismuth yellow can come into play and not have that effect as much. It's going to lighten, but still keep the warmth in there. And the other thing that you can do also is, now this is an older tube compared to how our tubes look now, which is this format with information on the front. But I show you this one because I happen to have it here, and it's transparent mixing white. So transparent mixing white is nowhere near as opaque and as heavy-handed as titanium white. It's overpowering. It's not as overpowering. So this is something I wish I knew about when I was a student, because that can keep you from really making every color pastel-like. And that might be fine for certain things. I mean, pastel type colors, after all, the light phthalo green is a beautiful pastel looking color. It really is. But sometimes you don't want that, right? Sometimes you want the richness of other things going on. Now I'm going to come back in with my brush here, and I'm going to manipulate a little bit more. I'm going to get some of that fluorescent orange and fluorescent yellow. And I'm going to kind of Again, get a little more homogenized. I don't want things to feel like too much like lines. We do get radiating things starting to happen when sun bursts out like that, but I just don't want it to be, yeah, I don't want it to be like a graphic image where it's these hard-edged surfaces.
Now, Jimmy, when it comes to painting something like this where the sun is bursting through these trees, do you tend to paint the skies first and then layer the trees on top of that?
I'll tend to kind of do really what I'm doing now and letting that tree, or at least the trunk of the tree, I should say, stand out. Now, I'll shake that up a bit. Keep in mind here, if we look at the finished version, notice that let's see if we can really, if we can get that to show there. That's almost a very deep violet that you're starting to see in there, right? So I take a lot of liberties. I take a tremendous amount of liberties. So one of the things you can see too is sort of a bluish violet, or maybe we'd call it a periwinkle that I put in there, simply because I wanted to break up the space a little bit more. And let me go back to the reference photo. I'm going to show you something there. I'm going to share my screen again. And in doing that, when we look up here in the pixelated version, pixelated, I think it's pixelated. And when we look at that, one of the things you see up here, it almost, in this area where the sky's poking through, it gets to be very, very soft. It doesn't have the intense heat that we have down in the tree trunk right here. Doesn't have that. It's much more muted up there. It's much more muted in the periphery over here as well. So we're really getting the heat around this center area, and we're getting the heat where that trunk is right there. So, when I see an area up top in this upper area where a little bit of light is coming through the trees, now I'm looking at that, and I don't think any one of you, if I said, what color is that? I don't think you'd say, well, that's violet, Jimmy, that because I don't think that's what you'd sense. I really don't. But I look at it and I'm looking at temperature. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, this is overwhelmingly yellows, oranges, reds. And could I do another variation of that up there and just make it cooler? I could. But if I make something that's sort of more violet or blue violet, it's really going to be cooler. So that's gonna provide a nice contrast to everything that's going on that's quite warm. And the other thing that's going to happen with that too, it's going to have a complementary effect to it. So again, I know that if I have something really, really orange, the complementary to that is going to be very blue, or it could be blue violet. It could be in that area. So I'm playing with that a little bit. Now, let me show you a few other things here, and then we'll jump back into that painting. We'll see how much more we get done, but I have some other things I want to show you here. So as I was mixing, as I was creating these little tiny things, and I tell you, one of the things with a palette knife painting, even for little thumbnail, because if they're the thumbnail, you can see how tiny these are. These were all created in about an hour and a half, all 4 of them. And depending on who you are, you might say, wow, that's a lot to do in an hour and a half. But again, if you think about my palette knife, and the one I was using mostly, if I can find, I think it was mostly this one. But if you think about that, if you put one mark down, look, there's a quarter of the whole thing right there. Here's another chunk right here. So you can get a lot done. So this was me just kind of working through ideas. But what I did is I put some other colors here as I started to play. So I love that when you look, let's go back to this. If you look at this and you say, okay, the bismuth, the phthalo green, indigo, orange, rose gold, and black, you got all those, and then you got all the fluorescents that are in the mix here. So you got those, a lot of bright things, a lot of dark things going on. But what I love is the beauty that you find when you take fluorescent orange and the light phthalo green, and look what happens. The light phthalo green gets knocked back by that orange, and it becomes a much more muted, earthy tone that I've got right there. Really soft. It becomes very cool. There's the bismuth yellow with the fluorescent orange. Look at how much that knocks back that fluorescent orange. It just really makes this, you know what that looks like? Reminds me of being a kid and the ice cream man came, the creamsicle. Right? That's creamsicle, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
the push
creamsicle
pops.
right
Remember
there.
those? Yeah.
Yeah, totally, right? This is a beauty. I love what happens with bismuth yellow in the indigo. It's not enough yellow to make it green, but it's enough to knock it back and get this really gorgeous color. So I love bright. I really do. A lot of my work, if you go to the Jimmy Leslie art, you see a lot of it. You'll see is very bold and very bright. But what makes things even more bold and bright is when you have the subtleties next to it. I want to show you this. This is fluorescent blue and the fluorescent red. I gotta mix that for you. I have to show you that
Say that
because
was
it's
a
just
relatively dark color. I was
yeah.
surprised to see how not fluorescent it looks.
Okay, yeah, because when they're mixed like that, yeah, they can have a totally different feel. And then what we're going to do, we're going to get the black light on. I don't want to miss that. And it depends on how
Don't worry,
much too.
I won't let you forget.
Yeah. So here is more of the pink. So let's go back to that one, Emmy, where you said that you're like, you're looking at that, you're saying, well, that's quite dark. It is. I think I definitely had more of the blue in there. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I did here? No, hold up. I made a mistake, everybody. And this is fine because I wanted to show you this too. There's the fluorescent blue and pink together right there. That's a gorgeous, just rich, deep violet. And let's kind of push that two ways. Let's move this over here. And then let's go a little bit more heavy on the blue. So we can push it more blue violet. And then let's go with the other, let's go heavier on the pink. So depending on the ratio, you can get kind of two different things going on there, really coming through. But sorry, yes, Emmy, that's very dark because it wasn't the fluorescent, it was the indigo. Yeah, there we go.
Notice that.
And, yeah. And the indigo is so strong, I probably don't even want to use that much. It's so strong. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to take the fluorescent mix. Yeah, there's where you get that deep, dark, almost like it's almost like an eggplant color. It's so deep. It's almost like an eggplant. Okay, so let's show you blacklight. Let's do that. All right, so here's what we're gonna have to do, everybody. We're gonna have to, well, you guys don't have to be careful. I do. Yes. I'm gonna go across the street. I'm gonna turn off my overhead lights. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. Right back. You can still hear me running over here. Okay.
Please be careful.
I haven't tripped yet. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my front light. There we go. I'm going to turn off and I'm going to move this. I'm going to use this here. All right. And I'm going to turn off one of my side lights first. All right, so we're almost in the dark. And I've got a black light here. And it's marked that it is, so nobody comes into my studio and shines it in someone else's eyes because that would be bad. You don't want UV light in your eyes. So I'm gonna turn this on and then we'll go off. Yeah. And there we get, and you can see the difference. Let's go back on for a second. When we look at the iridescent colors, they shimmer. Right? That's different than fluorescent. That's mica. So they're not fluorescing. They're not burning brightly like that. So they have that shimmery quality. But when we look at them in the dark, they don't do that. Everything up top almost looks black, almost. And actually, look at your light bismuth yellow with a blue light. Seeing that over the black, we get a purple in there. The indigo is just that may as well just be black. The transparent orange as well. And why is the transparent orange doing that? Color theory. This is a blue light. It's the blue and the orange. They're canceling each other out. So we need to get this kind of in a raking light. And you can see if you get too much, you're like, it's so bright.
Nothing, pure white.
Nothing shows, right? It's like pure white. So you can really go at a harsh, there. It's different angles, right? See, there you go. There's where you can really kind of see. And I should probably just do this and pull across this way. There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Right. It's hard to show black light, I tell you, but
it's really hard to show.
Cool in person.
But I'm going to show you something else here. So the painting we're working on, because that's heavy with fluorescence right there. Look again, look at the bismuth yellow in the middle. Bizarre, right? You get really strange kind of things. And of course I wouldn't show it like that, but I want to show you also, you can see that painting. Let's go light back on for a second. So you can see what painting we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's that driveway scene coming back to my studio. So really muted stuff, a lot of blues, violets, all in that territory. And then if we kill the lights again, go back on with blacklight, you can see where the fluorescence popping through there. So, you know, the thing about this, folks, why do I show you this? Because again, am I going to show this painting in blacklight? No, I'm not going to show it in blacklight. And I should show you also, yeah, you can actually see it. These are hand painted. So you actually see on the,
Oh, how cool.
which one is that? I can't even tell. That's the fluorescent red. Yeah, there you go.
Looks orange, but that's red.
Yeah, there we go. Now you can see the, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so really interesting kind of things happening there. Let me put the lights back on here. And I'm going to run back over. Let's get our overhead lights back on. Be right with you. I did clear a path so I wouldn't trip.
I can only imagine your studio is just packed full of paintings everywhere.
It does. There's a lot of things on the wall, but I got to tell you though, as an artist, I'm a very, very, I'm a neat guy. I'm a neat freak. So I kind of go through these periods, and this might be just a little tip for you folks too. When you're painting, sometimes I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves. They're like, oh, it's time to work in the studio, so I have to go in and I get work done, right? Get work done. And we beat ourselves up. I kind of look at my studio time almost like if I was going to work out, like there's a warm-up period. And so sometimes the warm-up period is me just kind of straightening up. It's just me kind of moving things around and like, oh, from that last session I was in here, there's some stuff that I kind of left over there. So let me stack that back up and let me do that. So there can be things like that can be helpful for you. So work isn't always physically about doing the work all the time. Just kind of keep that in mind. It'll help you be a little bit more kind to yourself, I think, and that's quite important. Okay, so let's move this out of the way. And I'm going to bring my palette back in here, and we'll get a little bit more done. Oh, that's magic. That's done already. We'll get a little bit more done. It's like cooking show here. When you have all these different things going on, it's definitely like the cooking show. But there's that good sort of intermediate stage again, where I'm just kind of sketching out. And then by popping in areas of the sky, you get that trunk to start to come out like we have here. Now, also, what I would suggest to you, I wasn't doing it over here just because of time constraints, but you know, if you have, it doesn't have to be on like a same pad like this. If you're working on a canvas, you could just have a piece of scrap paper, scrap canvas, or something off to the side where you can test colors too. Sometimes people get so caught up in the painting process. I think that's where you can learn a tremendous amount. And those marks that I showed you on that other surface, and let's get some lighter areas up here. I'm going to use some of that violet that I just had. I'm gonna come back up in here, and that's where I'm gonna kind of pop in some of those light violet marks that I saw up in the sky, or that I said were sort of cooler. So that's gonna help kind of pop and define what's going on, not only with the tree a little bit, but also when I'm looking at that, I know violet is going to be my complementary color to yellows. So kind of just bringing a little bit of that in, we'll get the yellow to pop a little bit more. And so I'm just kind of breaking up the space a little bit. And that's what you see happening when I'm doing something like this. These marks are like spaces being broken up there. So no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm working from a photo reference or working from life, I get rid of both of them at a certain point. So there's sometimes where if I'm out painting plein air, right, on location, sometimes if I get to where I feel like, you know what, I feel like I'm at like the, I don't know, 90% mark, right? I've got a large amount done. I sometimes turn around. I like move away and I just start saying, well, what are the right marks to make for the painting itself? You know, what can I do that can make something pop a little bit more? Again, what's in front of me is there as a reference for me to work off of. So it gives me an opportunity to make marks that are good for the painting, not just what I'm seeing in front of me, you know, and I suppose what I'm trying to say is my aesthetic as well. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use some of that darker violet that we had here. And I'm going to pull some of that into the trace. I'm going to, again, kind of break up that space. That'll define that a little bit more.
Now, I do have a really good question by Luis. What is the difference between transparent white and a zinc white?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a name. It's an excellent question. This is a zinc white. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just call it that because sometimes people really don't know unless they've learned it. They look at zinc white and go, what's zinc white? and that's totally logical that people would ask that. And you know, if you think about it, titanium white, if it wasn't so common and we didn't know it already, it would be the same thing. You would say titanium. Like, when do we come across titanium in our daily lives? We don't. So if it wasn't so common in art supplies, you would be asking that question. And so it's the overwhelmingly common white. So zinc white, so we just call it transparent mixing white. Sometimes you might hear it depends on the brand, you might hear like a soft mixing white, you might just see mixing white. But I will say this, that's a great question. Let's show you something on the tube here while we have just a few minutes left. If we look at certain things, so let's look at this not one of the new colors, but this is the quinacridone burnt orange that I had. And yeah, there we go, get in focus. PR206. So you'll see things like that on your tubes of paint. What does that mean? That means that's your color index number. It means pigment red 206. So you're always going to see a P if it's a pigment instead of a dye. You'll see R if it's red, O if it's orange, Y if it's yellow, and so on and so on. B if it's blue, but BK if it's black. So, and the number is just when that was chronologically categorized. So now these are my older tubes. So I gotta find out where it is on here. Let's see. Titanium white is, oh, there we go. Titanium white, if we get that in focus, is PW6. Mm-hmm. And zinc white is PW4. So yeah, that's it. So you'll be able to see that. But that's a smart question. I like that one. That's a good one. We got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to make a few more marks here, and I'm going to make a few more marks, and I'm going to show you again where we'd be going if we had like another, you know, if we were like at it for another hour or so. And I'll probably work on this one more and then post it on my Instagram as well.
Yep, and if anybody wants to go check that out, it is in the chat. So if you missed his, I believe it's what, at Jimmy Leslie?
Just Jimmy Leslie Art. My name is Art.
Yes. So you can check him out there.
I know this sounds goofy. I was always thinking about a business card, and I never did it because it's just too goofy. But my middle name is actually Art. Arthur. Really? My grandfather was Arthur. I'm an artist whose middle name is Art. As corny as that sounds, that's the truth.
It's perfect.
Good old grandpa. Good old grandpa Art.
Now, while you're making those last couple marks, which are, let's just be honest, magical. Love this so much. I love watching you paint. I could do this all day. But while you're doing that, Suzanne was asking if the the fluorescent paints that you're using, since it's a dye and it's not light fast, what happens to a mixture? So you mix the fluorescent orange with the transparent orange. What happens to those two over time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'll tell you what, it's a question that I literally just posed to the lab about a week ago. I've been working as the resident artist for Liquitex for this is my 14th year. And, you know, there's so many things that I've learned over the years and that I brought to the job beforehand, but definitely that I've learned so much from being part of it. But that came up. I was doing something. I was playing with these colors, literally doing stuff, just painting here in the studio. And I was thinking, huh, does a pigment-based color mixed with a fluorescence do anything to offset that? And what the lab said to me, they said, the short answer is no. But they said, if you were working, let's say, with another pigment-based yellow, so in the Liquitex, what we call our suggested primary colors, it's azo yellow medium. So if you used azo yellow medium and you wanted to really brighten that up with a fluorescent, make it just pop more, if that fluorescent was to fade later on, you'd still have a yellow there. So it wouldn't be like if you put the fluorescent down over a white surface and just used it flat, you know, it wouldn't happen. You know, it would disappear. Now, the other thing that comes up with that too is our varnishes have UV stabilizers in them. Okay. Here's the thing that I always tell people about UV stabilizers. We really can't give you an exact, like, well, if you use a UV stabilizer, that will prolong the paint for, you know, X amount of time, because there are so many variables that come into play. I always tell people, and this was another conversation with the lab at one point, that UV stabilizers are almost like sunblock. Now, if you look at my complexion, I'm as red as that fluorescent tube of paint. And like 2 minutes in the sun, I'm like, I'm a lobster, right? If I put on, yeah, okay, right? I mean, and so, yeah, but we know no matter what, even if that's not your skin type, you don't just put on sunblock in the morning and never reapply it. So UV stabilizers break down like sunblock breaks down. So they will help, but we just can't put a number of that. But again, I want to point out that other painting, you know, this one, I'll show you one last time, that when we look at this, those fluorescent, that strong fluorescent orange, again, that's been in my studio for 12 years. This is 2012. I painted that in June of 2012. So those are still quite strong under there because they've been in a corner where no sunlight is actually hitting those. There's what would you call it? Ambient light that's coming in the studio, of course, natural light and stuff like that. So you just don't have to be too freaked out. And I can tell you this, I'll leave you with this point. Do your own little light fastness test. Do a little thing, you know, get a good strong sun day, you know, really a sunny day. Doesn't have to be on a Sunday, and take a pigment-based color, put it down on just a sheet of paper, canvas, whatever, and use a fluorescent color as well. Cover each half with like, you know, cardstock or something where the light can't get through, and put them out in like on the blacktop. I mean, you don't even have to have it on the blacktop, but that's even gonna, you know, just be grabbing more sun. Put them out there and check them in about 12 hours. You'll be surprised what will happen with the fluorescent colors in that amount of time. But once again, I don't tell you that to freak you out because they're really fun to use. It's just if I was going to work with them, I wouldn't hang them in a place where there's a window over there and it's hitting it all day long. And you even know that with fabric furniture. Sometimes you ever seen in a home, you see a couch or a chair, one area never gets the sun hitting it and one closer to the window does, and you'll see that faded. So it's the same type of thing, right? Because that fabric is based on a dye. And your jeans, you don't have to wash them. You could leave the jeans out in your backyard, get beat with sun, and they're going to fade over time. You know what? There's a million things we like beyond what we do here. There's a million other things that always I feel like, oh, if we could talk about this, and we could go on for hours. I love this topic. I love just talking about art materials. If you guys after the fact are like tomorrow, you're like, man, I wish I asked this question, and you know, and you reach out to Emmy, she'll reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer that. If you're on at TFACNA, ask me the question there. I'm happy to answer it. If you're on my personal Instagram, it's no imposition. Ask me the question. I'm super happy. I dig this stuff. I love hearing from you guys. So yeah, I thank you. Is there anything else before we wrap up, Emmy?
I think that was all of the questions for the most part. There was one, but it doesn't really have to do with the Liquitex paints, but I feel like I have to ask you just because I know the answer, but I feel like it's an important thing to ask.
Okay, shoot.
Somebody was saying that they were taught to use the Liquitex gesso as a substitute for white paint.
Oh, that's interesting. My question first would be, I wonder why, would be interesting. The gesso I mean, if I mix the gesso with the paint, it's going to tint it. And there's nothing wrong with actually, if you want to gesso your ground with a tinted ground, you could do that at the same time. Now, when I did the painting here for you guys tonight, that mixed media paper, I could work with acrylic right on top of that. There's no problem with doing that, but it would sink in a lot faster. So I put a coat of gesso down, and then I put the fluorescent orange on top of that. I could have mixed the two together. That's fine, but the gesso is going to give you a grittier surface that's meant to grab and hold on to subsequent layers of paint. And it's not going to have quite the nice smooth texture that to really brush out. You're going to get heavy drag. So yeah, I don't know why anybody would have suggested that. I'm not sure what the advantage would be.
I feel like it would be one of those things that, like, if you just don't have white paint and all you have is gesso.
Yeah, listen, if you were in I tell you what, if I was going out to plein air paint and for some reason, not that I bring gesso with me, but maybe I had it in my car. Yeah, it wouldn't stop me from the session. I'd be like, listen, I'm here. I've made do with, I've wound up at a plein air session and forgot my palette and found a pizza box in the garbage and took the side that didn't have grease on it. That was my palette. You know, it wasn't great, but yeah, it worked. But yeah, I would just answer it this way. It wouldn't hurt, but I don't see an advantage. I think you would find that it would just be a lot tougher to work with. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm super curious though.
Grittiness would be my issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's always curious. It's always very interesting, like how things, come about. This is a good question though, but yeah, I don't see an advantage. I would say that.
But that was all of the questions though.
Okay.
That was such an awesome demo. I seriously love watching you paint.
Oh, thank you. I love doing it for you guys.
I always forget like how amazing fluorescent colors look when you start toning them down.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, I had the mystery art box show where I just had to paint using whatever they had stuck in the box, and they stuck fluorescent paints. I just had nothing to tone them down with.
Yeah.
It was bright.
And you bring up a good point though. I mean, the fluorescents they're obviously they're beautiful on their own. And when you start mixing them with other colors, they're not going to have that. They're not going to fluoresce like that because you're knocking it back. But I think people like forget. They think fluorescent is like, for the high school like prom poster, and they want everything to be bright, and it is. But it doesn't have to be.
No.
So and yeah, you can get. And again, everybody, just because again, I can keep saying I'll leave you with this, and then I'll go on 20 more minutes. But I do want you to think about, just take time. This is always a tip that I've been giving for the last year or two, is go in the studio too, and maybe don't have a day where you're going to paint. I mean, maybe you eventually will, but just have a day where you're going to say, I'm just going to play with some colors, and I'm just going to write down these little mixtures. And I'm also going to play. This is what a professor made our class do when I was in college 100 years ago in a color theory class. He made us pick 4 colors that we did not like, things that we just had an aversion to. And that's what we had to work with for a project. And as a result, if you look at my body of work, it's amazing all the violets I have in there. Violet was the color I had an aversion to. And you might think like, why would that be? My sister had this violet room when she was like violet and pink when she was a little kid. And I think I was just,
sister.
I think I was like tortured by that or something. I was like, violet. So sometimes just picking things that you would not normally have on the palette and playing with mixtures and just have some fun mixing complementary colors, and you'll kind of open up your palette, and it'll really kind of wake you up a little bit. I think it's a good idea.
Such a great idea, and it's such a good idea to just constantly be playing with your colors, especially when you come out with new colors.
Yeah, there you go.
I am so excited to get my hands on those. I cannot wait to play. But as always, Jimmy, it was so great having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming, and we cannot wait to have you back on again.
Yeah, sounds good. And go give your moms, significant others, daughters, your International Women's Day. Girls rule.
Yes.
That's for my daughter. Girls rule. All right, guys. See ya.
Quick reminder. Join me next week, because I'm going to be stretching watercolor paper.
Oh, that's a good topic.
It's a very good topic. So if you've ever struggled with a buckled watercolor paper, make sure you guys join me next week, because we are going to be stretching watercolor paper and avoiding that problem altogether. So
Yeah, sounds good.
I will see you guys next week.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Take care. Bye, Emmy. See ya.